The being has already perceived that in a very simple way, transformation occurs through a change of state, and therefore, its own transformation depends on the transformation of its state. It does not seem complicated to perceive how much this is reflected in any aspect of any characteristic that accompanies the being. Subtle alterations influence density, and alterations in density influence subtlety. The being has also already perceived that there is only one confrontation, and that the only adversary is itself. In other words, the being faces its own creation, which becomes the ring or the battlefield. In this confrontation, the being expands, maintains, or dissolves its own creation. This perspective contradicts the idea of an external creator to the being, as the master of creation. It also contradicts the vision that places science external to the being, as the shaper of all things. All of this is part of what fuels the battle, that is, the arguments of the intellect to defend creation. The being already perceives how created intelligence is the creator of obstacles, metaphors, paradoxes, and solutions. The being that inquires is subject to limitations imposed by itself. The game becomes fun as long as it relies on the participation of a being full of ignorance. The diminished being is not just an avatar in this game, it is the very reason for creation, for in that being, the being itself manifests. When the book begins to be read, the battlefield, all the tools, and all the weapons, start to be revealed. Two aspects are evaluated by the elements that make up the being in manifestation. The first is the paradox of life, which places the being alongside the manual that guides it. The second is the solution extracted from the being's conclusion upon perceiving itself diminished. To become great, it is necessary to reduce itself even further, infinitely, until it disappears into the consciousness it represents. By dissolving into consciousness, the nothingness, that is in everything, is fully understood. All existence, as well as the tools that sustain and perceive it, parts of a wonderfully created game, existing within the intimacy of the being. The necessity embedded in creation justifies the form and manner in which the parts interrelate. Intelligence is intelligently planted by the being itself, and is a fundamental and strategic figure for movements. The apparent escape of the being from confrontation is based on the temporary dulling of intelligence, and the strengthening of any mechanisms that return it to sleep, distancing it from the battlefield, and giving it the impression of being closer to itself. The scene and the setting, when set aside, keep the character out of action. In this limbo where the being finds itself, there is no work, and consequently, any possibility of the being's transition to itself becomes impossible.